Training can be delivered in multiple formats. The most obvious and original way to present training is a traditional lecture format. It is what it is. You give a lecture, people take notes. It's good for facts, but it's not good for higher cognitive thinking. Higher order thinking doesn't really do all that well. They can be boring, but they're cheap, and they can be effective. It depends on what you need to train people on. If you have some facts that need to be stated, and there's nothing replacing a good old-fashioned lecture, okay? So, but a lecture can have active practice built in. It just depends on the type of lecture used. Okay? The most widely used training is on-the-job training, and on-the-job training, and the logic is there. The idea is, if you want somebody to learn a task, then show them the task. Why take them to another room and no? The fact is, if you want to demonstrate the process of, it is best to learn a new behavior and demonstrate it in the exact same context. So why would you learn it in a training program over here and then try to demonstrate it in a room over there? Okay, just do it in one spot. Okay, but unfortunately, this on-the-job training often involves a situation where, hey, we got a new guy, and let's look around the office and see who's available. You're in charge of training. And so all of a sudden the trainer has no preparation, no background, and just like, here it is. Okay, that's not probably the best way to do something like this, okay? But it makes sense, all right? And in fact, on-the-job training in the form of apprenticeships have been around for thousands of years. This plan is, a master tradesperson or a skilled tradesperson will take on an apprentice, and the apprentice is committed to, and in a real traditional apprenticeship program, it's somewhere around 7 years. The skilled trade person, and it's a trade-off. That is to say, the apprentice makes very little money during the apprenticeship program. Therefore, the skilled tradesperson can benefit from their labor. But what's happening is the apprentice is then gaining the occupational experiences that the skilled trade person is offering, which allows the apprentice to become a skilled trade person themselves. So it's an interesting trade-off that, again, it's been around for thousands of years. Job rotation is an interesting idea, and I think very effective, because too many employees or too many people in this world, they view the world as real segmented and sliced up. And so people can become an expert at their job, but have no idea about those occupations around them. And every job does not exist in isolation. There are support organizations that help you perform your job, and the outcomes of your job will impact people on another end. And so it's inherent upon you to understand how the different, the jobs that create things that impact you, what you are impacting. I think it's incredibly important that you get a job rotation. So you get the idea, a new employee in the HR might rotate through staffing, compensation, benefits, and training, so that they'll kind of have access to all the different functions of the human resources department. Okay? Or perhaps here, a high potential employee, because a manager that has not, in fact, become, and we talked about that when we did performance management, and we said, look, how can a manager effectively evaluate an employee if they don't really know what the job is? Okay, so I think it's important for a lot of reasons. Multimedia, yeah, obviously this is the way that the world works today, with by far the majority of training being done, ongoing training, especially compliance training, done with videos, and as I said, they're done so poorly. The worst one was the active shooter training. The video was just so obnoxiously stupid. The actors were just like, it was just like, what are you thinking? Nobody took it seriously. And I mean, we faculty, we all talked about it. And we're like, why are we spending money on this? Right? Oh my God. Okay, but they are convenient, right? You can do it anywhere and any time. And yeah, you can slide it in here, slide it in there. I, in fact, did some of my training during final exams. You know, students were taking the final exam, and I just watched the training videos with the captioning on. Really effective use of that hour, okay? Really effective. Coaching. And coaching is obviously very similar to mentoring. And it depends on exactly how you define mentoring. But supervisors and subordinates, and it's like, here's where you're at, here's where you should be. And again, this is training, but it's really the process of feedback from a performance review, sort of, kind of, right? But it can be more than that depending on what you do, okay? And behavioral modeling, and we've talked about that idea, that based on social learning, and so perhaps an exemplary employee will be brought, and your job is to watch the best employee in the company for a few hours and check out what they're doing, okay? That could be. Business simulations. Now, again, as we said, you know, a lecture is great if you just want to give a couple of facts. But once you start to get into real higher order, you usually need much more hands-on. And so business simulations are a good way. And so a manager might be presented with an organizational situation or a challenge and asked to make decisions. And this is a neat idea. You know, the trainees, they love this. But often what happens in these business simulations is that they're set up in a competitive fashion. There's a couple of teams or something like that. And the teams get so deeply engrossed in this idea, they lose sight of the point. They are so excited about winning the game, they forgot to pay attention to what they were supposed to be doing. Yeah. How about a corporate university? And now, obviously, McDonald's Hamburger University is the biggest one. But there have been there are many others, 1,800 of them apparently. I don't know anything about that. And so they large corporations that view training so important that they have a dedicated place for training, and they bring the workers to that location to do their job. Okay? And then finally, this is a newer idea, a TRAP, a training repayment agreement provision. And this is an interesting idea because what happens is that training is expensive. Absolutely, training costs organizations a lot of money. And if an organization does onboarding training, right? Oh my God, and they spend thousands of dollars training a new employee, all right? And sometimes training is even, sometimes it's paid training. And so now the employee is there for about 3 months and says, oh, I really don't like this job. And they leave. Your organization is out how many thousands of dollars, okay? And so these TRAPs, all right, are a new way to shift the burden of the cost of training onto employees. That is to say, an employee signs a document that says, I agree that I will get your training, and after this, I will stay employed with you for at least 1 year or whatever the contract states. And if I leave the organization within a year, then I must repay the cost of the training, okay? And so some people argue that this reduces a worker's bargaining power and holds down wages because now the employee, whatever, I don't know how long the TRAP is going to be, a year, 2 years, 5 years. I've heard of some TRAPs, gosh, I remember one, it was a Korean student. I remember when I was at Carnegie Mellon, and their company, and in fact it was LG, the LG company paid for this guy to come to America to get an MBA, but then they had a 10-year commitment. You must stay at the organization for 10 years or you have to pay back the entire cost. The cost of a Carnegie Mellon MBA, oh my God, $250,000, it would not surprise me, okay? $250K would not shock me. And now all of a sudden what happens is he goes back to Korea and now he's got 10 years. What if the company culture goes sour? He can't quit. What if, why would the company give him a raise? You know, why would they? Because he's committed for 10 years. And so it really takes away from the employees' power, right? It really puts the power into the company. Huh?